When we say biodiversity, what we mean is the diversity of different life forms we see in a landscape. So biodiversity includes the plants, all those beautiful different understory layers, mid-story layers, different species of tree. It also involves all of the birds and the bats and the bees and the beetles and other things that begin with B. But humans are also part of that equation too. Humans are part of nature, intrinsically there. So as we heard from Chris, there we go. Cities are growing in size and increasing in concentration on places where we have really naturally high levels of biodiversity. They're also home to threatened species. So 30% of Australia's threatened species actually occur in cities. This means that cities are actually a really important place to focus wildlife and species conservation efforts. We also know that urban nature and biodiversity is really vital for human well-being. So the important thing I want to note here is green is good, but biodiverse is better. Biodiverse urban greening is something that's contributed all these wonderful things to human well-being in cities. So what's the answer? I mean, the key thing for me as an urban ecologist and urban conservationist is recognizing that this is not traditional conservation. This is a human-controlled landscape. And that comes with some advantages and it comes with some disadvantages. One of the best things is that we have control. This is a novel ecosystem. We can look for novel solutions and it's time to think outside the box. The key point of BSUD is it is essentially a design framework for creating urban areas that have that net benefit for native species and for ecological communities as well, through the provision of key resources and also the mitigation of threats. We're looking here at maximizing the benefits by focusing on the ecological needs of the things that live in that landscape. And it's quite different to the idea of offsetting. So we're integrating nature into the landscape, ideally so that we can have more of those everyday nature interactions that people so benefit from. There are 5 key principles in BSUD. Just briefly, maintain and introduce habitat, facilitate dispersal, so that's allowing things to move around, minimize threats and disturbances, so that's making sure that we think about responsible pet ownership and pesticide use, facilitate natural ecological processes, so making sure things like pollination and seed dispersal can take place, and most importantly, creating positive human-nature interactions. So for the last few years, we've started to come up against quite a lot of challenges. We've thought about overcoming them. There are conceptual challenges to overcome, things like languages, perceptions, just people's general understanding of what urban biodiversity conservation means. There are institutional barriers, planning systems, maintenance systems, implementation ones, things like the cost of materials or having to potentially change the way you're doing a design. And then there are procedural ones to do with the fact that you have, as you can see here, multiple actors and changing responsibilities in the urban context. For me, a key part of this question is thinking about how we find space for nature in an urban landscape. And that means we need to be a little bit creative. And so there's some images here of what an urban street in inner city Melbourne might look like if we just removed the cars from those car parking spaces, put them in multi-story car parks within 100 meters of those spaces, and then converted those car park spaces to parklets. And we assessed what impact this would have on a whole range of different things, including the urban tree canopy and stormwater control, but also the impact that that would have for biodiversity.